Shabbat shalom, everybody. It's Rabbi Stephen here, Rob Shmuel ben Yehoshua, Rashbi in the house. Hopefully, you're having a good time in your house too. And hey, we're still all hunkering down, and they say that this quarantine is going to be modified. It's going to end soon. And with that, on my website, I've added a new tab. It's called Forum. So you've got Home, File Share, which is where the documents are. If the Misha Barak list, if you have somebody that you'd like on there, so we can pray for their health. Also, the booklets to follow along with services. And then the next tab over is a new tab, Forum. That's where we have discussions. You can ask a question. And the third one down is a discussion of when you think would be a good time to gather again, to gather in person. Now, some people have already answered, and they said that they want to wait for the all clear from our public health officials and our government officials. Other people feel it's a little even wait even longer than that. Some people feel shorter than that. So let's put down your thoughts and let us know. Also, in that forum is another topic. See, in this week, we're going to do a live stream Friday night service, and I think the week after that, we'll do a live stream Saturday. That seems to be pop. People are joining in, so if you like it, we'll do it. Uh, the week after that, which is the last weekend in May, also coincides with Shavuot. So we've counted the Omer for 49, 50 days, and we have Shavuot, which celebrates the second part of the spring harvest. We've done the barley, and now we're getting ready to do the wheat, and that's what the omer is. It's a unit of measure to bring an omer of barley to the temple, and it's also when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the first set of 10 commandments. So there's a couple of things there, a couple of events that holiday acknowledges, as is typical in the Hebrew calendar. So put down your thoughts. If you have any questions, there's a tradition that during Shavuot, since Moses is coming down with the Torah, that we do a Torah discussion. So I'm thinking that on that Friday night, instead of a sermon, put down any questions, any topics, and we'll answer them, and that's what we'll do instead of a sermon. So, excuse me, see what you think. This isn't COVID, this is allergies. It's that time of the year, folks. It comes with the Omer, what can I say? So, this week, we have, again, a double portion, and I think this is the last double portion until we get to Deuteronomy. But this is Behar and Behukotai, and these are two portions that typically go together, and it also completes the book of Leviticus. So Behar Sinai, Moses comes talking about Mount Sinai, and the reference here is that just like we get a day of rest every week, the land is entitled to rest. So it starts out by talking about how, and ancient Israel being an agrarian society, they did a lot of farming, they did a lot of cattle herding. So the land every 7 years gets a rest to replenish. And this is a sabbatical. And it's sort of a celebration. They blow the ram's horn, for the seventh year. And God says, I know a lot of you are worried that, God, how are we going to make a living for that year? He says, don't worry. In the sixth year, there'll be enough, not just for that year, not just for the sabbatical year, but for the eighth year, which is the first year of the new cycle, because it takes a while for the ground of the land to produce. So God says, if you obey my commandments and if you give the land its rest, then it will replenish and it will produce. And, they were doing this when I was in Israel. We'd have, they'd always leave a field fallow, and that way it replenishes. And, that way it produces grain. You don't exhaust the minerals. It gives the land a chance to rest too. It also talks about the Jubilee year, which is the 50th year. Now, this is really interesting. Think about this. In the Jubilee year, if you've indentured yourself to another family because you're on tough times, the land's not doing what you want it to do, maybe things just aren't working out, so you are working for a family and they're taking care of you, and in exchange you're working. But now and also you've had to sell your land in order to get enough money to survive. So what happens is that in that 50th year, all land, anybody who sold land off or mortgaged it off or whatever, now reverts back to its original owners. Now think about that. That's quite a concept. So, and of course the person, the people that bought the land, they're entitled to, the produce for all the time that they've had it, you know. But think about the fact that this way the economy doesn't get top heavy. There are societies like ours where, the top, I don't know, 1, 2, 3% own 90% of the goods. And this was instituted, this was in the Torah to prevent that from happening so that the economy gets top heavy and most of the wealth is in the hands of just a select few people. The other part of it is that if your relative, if somebody from your family or your clan has had to sell themselves into indentitude, whatever that word is, in order, because again, they've fallen on hard times and, there's a chance that they might be sold into slavery, because of the debt, it's up to you as a family member to bail them out and take them in and help, they'll work with you, and that way they get back on their feet. So, in a way, the idea of welfare, of charity, and in Hebrew, there is no word for charity. It's tzedakah, which is the word for justice. You're doing justice by helping somebody out. That's the point of this. So it's up to you to rescue and ransom or bail them out, and they can work for you or whatever the arrangement's going to be. See? So in that way, everybody takes care of them of each other. And because we're a society, we're one people, and ultimately God says, look, ultimately this isn't your land anyway. I've leased it to you to work. Say I've apportioned a certain amount of land to everybody to work it, but ultimately remember, if you get real possessive, remember, I created the earth, it's my land, you're guests on my land. So that's that part. Now in Behukotai, it talks about Behukotai, the judgments and the decrees. That's what a hukad is. It's a decree. And God says, if you've obeyed, if you've gone along, if you've accommodated these mitzvot, if you've gone along with the Torah, then you'll thrive, you'll flourish. And that's about maybe 4 or 5 verses. And then in another 30 verses, we have something called the tochacha, which is warning. That's what it means. It means warning. And the tochacha appears twice in the Torah, once here at the end of Leviticus, also in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy named because do, in the French, anybody who speaks French, do means two. Spanish, it's dos. Maybe Italian, it's like do too. But it's a second retelling, and they say it twice to hone in. So basically, and it's like the second paragraph of the Shema. If you do everything you're supposed to do, then the grain will come in its proper seasons, and the land will give its produce, and that's the first part of the tochacha. Now, the second part of the tochacha, which is a lot longer than the first part, says if you don't, and there's gradations, there's levels of if you don't. If at first you don't, then the land won't produce. And you'll have a hard time fending off your enemies. And if you still don't get it, if you still don't obey the commandments and go by the mitzvot, and here I am using the word obey, let's just use the word comply. I don't want to make it seem like in a way we are slaves, but I don't want to make it seem that we're mindless robots that have to just go along. We study Torah and everything. So let's use the word comply. If you comply with these, if you don't comply with these mitzvot for this, and after all of this happens, then the ground will be like iron, and people will come and they'll scatter you, and finally, if you don't, you're off the land. But just understand that I'm God and I love you, and I'm still waiting for you to come back. I'm waiting for, teshuva. I'm waiting for that teshuva and that repentance and that remorse. And I'm waiting for you to come back to me, and then, everything will happen. And the moral of the story is that's why a lot of sages feel like we've been in exile for those, 1,500, 1,800 years, whatever it was, after the second temple was destroyed till 1940. 45 or 48, or maybe even earlier if you want to count, when the wave of Chalutzim, the pioneers, went back to resettle the land. People say this is because of the golden calf. It's because of some of the others that, some of the idolatry that some of the kings engaged in, and the people went along with it. And this is God saying, you haven't learned. Now, maybe after this time being in exile, you've learned your lesson. And that's the point of the Tochacha. Now you've come back to the commandments. This is why you have some rabbis in Israel right now, very, very traditional, almost to the point of being fanatical about people adhering to Judaism and complying with the mitzvah. They don't want to see this happen again. Let's do this. We'll get back to third temple. See? So that concludes Leviticus. Again, please join us Friday night for services, for our live stream. Notices will be going out. The following Saturday, I think it's 90% sure we'll do it. And then there's that Friday for Shavuot. Any questions, any comments, any topics you'd like to see discovered. But this being the end of the book of Leviticus, we say Chazak, Chazak, Benit Chazik, strength, strength, may you be strong, may you have strength within you. And that's the warrior's cry as we continue to proceed through our Torah. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you again for listening.